All right, check. Very good. Okay. So later this evening, I'll be giving my speech in response to the Trudeau's illegitimate and dangerous use of the Emergencies Act. In accordance with the near 100% of constituents who've contacted me, I will be voting no on Monday. In my speech, I'm going to focus in on the fabricated pretext Trudeau is using to justify his power grab. The Canada Science and Policy Committee to Exit the Pandemic of the Institute for the 21st Century declared Canada's pandemic over on February 16th, 3 days ago. Historically, we've always seen a virus reach this point. Our illiberal government knows this and has been hard at work manufacturing a pretext to keep the public under its thumb. The Prime Minister decreed mandated injections, knowing the upheaval it would trigger. He said so himself last year. The pandemic is over, but now Trudeau and his great resetting deputy have invoked the Emergencies Act. They've been gunning for this since they decreed the mandates. In true Putinesque fashion, Freeland finally provoked Canadians enough to get the badly needed pretext to invoke the Emergencies Act and go after our bank accounts. This isn't her first rodeo. Trudeau and Freeland didn't need to subject Canadians to the Emergencies Act to trace money. FinTrack reporting and online payment processors like PayPal provide security authorities with any transaction information they need. Did you see how giddy the Prime Minister in waiting was when she announced the bank accounts were going to be frozen? Someone must be very pleased with his prodigy. They did it to execute the largest data scoop ever. Remember how they were outed trying to get the Canada Housing and Mortgage Corporation to give them Canadians' bank info, and StatsCan before that? It's always about the money. The despotic duo have plunged the country into such debt, Canadians are now enslaved by taxes. Once the Canada Revenue Agency sinks its teeth into your banking information, they'll think of rationales to squeeze you even more. I'd like to take this opportunity to look at how we got here and dispel some of the liberal legacy media myths we've been hearing. Before we get into how we got here, it's important to know where we are right now. The Emergencies Act was passed by the Mulroney government in 1998. It was passed to replace the War Measures Act, which was abused by the last Prime Minister Trudeau. The Emergencies Act put in strict thresholds before it could be used. And we believe the government has not met those thresholds. Rights groups agree and have taken the government to court. But the orders issued under the Act are in force right now. If the emergency declaration is voted down by Parliament, the order will no longer be in force. Trudeau has used the law to declare all protesting on Parliament Hill to be illegal for the duration of the emergency order. But it's not just Parliament. Every war memorial in Canada is currently a prohibited protest site. Even protesting the emergencies order is against the law. Even protesting the protest is prohibited. How did we get here? How do we end up living in a country where you can't even legally demonstrate? The answer is federal vaccine mandates. Last June, when Trudeau said he opposed vaccine mandates because they're divisive, clearly that was an understatement. Carbon taxes and fighter jet procurement are divisive, but they don't tear the fabric of society the way Trudeau has done. Trudeau called his super spreader election and immediately started dropping in the polls. So he desperately grabbed the one policy he knew would wedge Canadians. He vowed to impose a federal COVID shot mandate on all government employees, federally regulated employees, and federally regulated travelers. After winning the election, he decreed everyone must get the shot, or lose basic freedoms, in many cases, even the right to work. No province in Canada adopted mandates this far-reaching. Provincial mandate rules differ from province to province, but generally they target people who work in healthcare and long-term homes. But even Quebec pulled its mandate on nurses because the risk to the healthcare system was too great. Quebec had to weigh the costs against the benefits of mandatory vaccination for nurses. That never happened federally. Your choice was to take the shot or lose your job. If you lost your job, you would be denied employment insurance benefits. In order to justify infringing on the mobility rights by requiring anyone boarding a plane to be vaccinated, Trudeau demonized the unvaccinated. He said they were a threat to your children. He called them racists and misogynists during the election. He said they were nothing but the fringe of society. Their beliefs are unacceptable. He questioned how he could even tolerate their existence. If he had said this about any other identifiable minority group, he would have been in jail for hate speech. They never studied the costs of alternative options to increase vaccination rates because mandates were a political choice. The government is now claiming they need to invoke the emergency law because they claim these protests are an uprising. If you believe the government, and most media seem to, they're saying the federal mandate policy caused Canadians to rise up and overthrow the government. When Trudeau decided he'd divide Canadians to win an election with federal mandates, over 80% of adult Canadians were vaccinated. Now, 5 months later, 89% of adult Canadians are vaccinated. We went from being one of the most vaccinated countries in the world to being one of the more slightly vaccinated countries in the world. And it only cost us peace, order, and many nights' good sleep. No one has done more to encourage Trudeau's division than the federally funded and regulated media outlets. Now, once upon a time, journalists believed it was their job to speak truth to power, to hold the powerful accountable. This meant asking tough questions of governments, corporations, and the police. Now, they've become the propagandists for the government. Today brings us the perfect example. Yesterday, the police moved their mounted unit into the crowds of protesters. Social media reports said somebody had been killed. Authorities said nobody had been seriously injured. Authorities said a protester had thrown a bicycle at one of the horses. The media have been eager to debunk the social media claim that somebody was killed, but did they just accept the word of law enforcement? No, they asked the paramedics on the scene if they'd treated anyone. But what about the claim of a bike being thrown at a horse? Independent media have video showing a man holding a bike while a horse passed by unharmed. There's also a picture of a disabled Canadian lying on the ground next to a mobility scooter. All morning, CBC has been debunking the social media claim somebody was killed, but they repeated the police claim of a bike being thrown when all evidence suggests it was a mobility scooter that was trampled. When the media are happy to repeat unsubstantiated claims while dumping on demonstrators, it breeds mistrust and resentment. So let me be clear. The local police had been asking for federal help for weeks. 8 days ago, Trudeau admitted the federal government had declined the request from Ottawa's police chief. Trudeau's mandates sparked these protests. Trudeau's language inflamed these protests. Trudeau's incompetence kept these protests going. This isn't about the police or protesters. This is about Trudeau and his Liberal allies who lie for him. Speaking of media myths, the CBC's been repeating more false claims made by the Liberals. This one is about the powers being used to force tow truck operators to remove the trucks in Ottawa. The media keep claiming that forcing the tow truck drivers against their will to tow away protesters required the Emergencies Act. False. Section 129B of the Criminal Code gives the police the option to require anyone, without reasonable excuse, to assist a public officer or peace officer in the execution of his duty in arresting a person or in preserving the peace. The Emergencies Act is only to be used when there is no other law which can be used. The police have made over 100 arrests, including nearly all the organizers, but not one of the organizers have been charged with an offense under the Emergencies Act, not a single one. So why did they do it? One word: money. The third media myth I wish to highlight is the myth that the media care about foreign influence on Canadian politics. Now, they only care if they can use it to make conservatives look bad. How do I know? Because when I introduced the Foreign Lobbyist Transparency Act 3 years ago, not one single reporter or journalist from the Liberal-funded media ever contacted me about it. Now suddenly, the CBC cares deeply about foreign funding of grassroots political campaigns. Foreign-funded environmental groups have been engaged in illegal road blockades and illegal rail blockades for years. 2 days ago, 20 axe-wielding criminals stormed a natural gas company worksite. They torched vehicles while workers were still sitting in them. They destroyed buildings and construction equipment. This was a planned eco-terrorist attack. Do you think Trudeau's going to start looking into the actions being bankrolled by foreign funds? Of course not. When Christian churches are burned down, Trudeau says it's understandable. When terrorists attack Indigenous pipeline workers, Trudeau stays silent. When working-class Canadians demand their rights be respected, Trudeau calls them racists, issues emergency decrees, and seizes their bank accounts. Trudeau's tearing this country apart to keep his grip on power, and only the Conservative Party can put it back together. Now, despite the claims of the Prime Minister that the Emergencies Act was introducing temporary government powers, he's been contradicted quickly by Deputy Prime Minister, Finance Minister, and future leadership hopeful Chrystia Freeland. Freeland actually said, quote, "Some of those tools, we will be putting forward measures to put those tools permanently in place. The authorities of FinTrack, I believe, do need to be expanded to cover crowdsourcing platforms." End quote. So Minister Freeland said the quiet part out loud and revealed the true Liberal agenda. The Liberals want to keep these emergency powers in place. Let me know what you think about those facts in the comments below. Tune in tonight, though, to about 9:30 to watch as we begin to put it back together. Live from Ottawa, this is Cheryl Gallant.